So what we're going to do today is kind of walk through Google's Gen AI stack and strategy. But to make sure I make this useful and applicable, I'm going to tie the details we go over today back to two critical themes, right? One is going to be the democratization of AI to your enterprise. So as we walk through, as I work with customers trying to help them kind of integrate Gen AI into their, just into their enterprise and really into their culture and work it into their products, drive productivity and all those different things. I see two emerging archetypes here, right? One is where you have the data science team and kind of the advanced technology teams really own the Gen AI tool set and technology, right? So those are the groups that are doing most of the building and creating and experimenting. And they're working off a backlog that's kind of came in, curated by executives and have come in. And Gen AI isn't being blocked off from the rest of the organization. It's just that the rest of the organization, the business users, customer service agents, operations teams and things of that nature, they function more as end users, right? Using a lot of the chatbots we've seen today and things of that nature. And the good news is in those organizations, we're seeing incremental growth in the rate at which Gen AI is being integrated into their products and into their business processes. So they are seeing gains. But I really want to touch on the second archetype is the one where Gen AI tools are opened up across the business to product teams, ops teams, data teams, and others. And those teams are being encouraged to experiment with ways to improve their outcomes, improve the quality of their connections to their customers, and to improve their productivity. And these businesses are starting to see exponential growth in the rate at which Gen AI is making its way into their products and into the way it's being worked into their back end processes and driving productivity. And that's happening because what's happening is they're getting the force multiplier effect of the generative AI technology, but then that's also being further exacerbated and amplified by the force multiplying effect of activating the employees that are closest to the problems that need to be solved and closest to the windows of opportunities that need to be exploited. So the reason I want to touch on this, again, tie back how these technologies help drive, our platform helps drive that democratization of the technology throughout the org. The second theme that I want to touch on is as you kind of drive Gen AI through your organization, there's going to be a need to build the capability to match the speed of innovation you've ideally unlocked in your business with the ability to safely and responsibly roll those innovations out for production use, right? So we've had a lot of good talks that touch on that, right? Show really briefly, kind of at a high level, talk about how our platform kind of helps you be able to do that, right? And one of the big themes and kind of what I'm illustrating with this slide is that while it can feel as though generative AI tech is only a couple of years old and Chat GPT hit the scene and it became a buzzword and everyone was aware of it, Google's been leveraging this technology in critical, like billion user applications like search and Gmail for years, right? And have taken that expertise in rolling out these models. We have thousands of models in production use in critical applications, and we've taken that expertise and rolled it into the platform. So it's our Gen AI platform is really just integrated into our AI ML platform, which is Vertex AI. Okay. So again, here really briefly, this again speaks to the same thing as how the Gen AI aspect is a horizontal and touches all aspects of the platform, and we'll dig into that as we go through. Right. So here's the vertically integrated stack. I'll really briefly touch on the fact that the first part at the bottom is that AI optimized infrastructure. We have a wide choice of kind of accelerator options. This is important for the organizations that need to run their own models. We've helped customers. I know Wayfair is a really good example. Is a really good public use case out there where you can search where they were able to lower their infrastructure costs by, I believe, I don't want to misquote it, but in the realm of 70-80% by leveraging some of the custom infrastructure that we're able to supply in terms of TPUs, which is kind of a Google custom chip for accelerating AI workloads. It's really actually focused on linear algebra, which behind the scenes is a big part of machine learning and things of those nature. But using TPUs, GPUs, and our AI hypercomputer, you're able to kind of run those things really efficiently. So the part that often gets overlooked, but I think it becomes really important, because if you're running models, if you're not running Google hosted models, then or you're running open source models, you start running these things at scale, the infrastructure, while we don't talk about it a lot, probably becomes the biggest source of cost for this. So a very important part of the equation that I want to touch on. Again, we can follow up outside of this if there's something interesting to talk about for your specific use case. And maybe the biggest evidence of the underlying infrastructure being very strong is the fact that 70% of generative AI unicorns are building their platforms on Google Cloud. Okay, so now the next layer in this is the Gemini models. Now, there are actually a lot more Google models than Gemini, but this is kind of the one that gets all the press. So we focus and talk about that quite a bit. Now, continue. Gemini is actually surfaced in three primary modalities. Two of them are here. One is AI Studio, the other Vertex AI, and the third that we'll talk about really briefly is Duet AI. But AI Studio is the area where I was talking about democratization, right? Where your business users would be able to safely experiment and innovate with all the enterprise grade guardrails that Google provides, and actually that we use ourselves, right? So an example here, and another thing I want to touch on Gemini. A lot of people are aware of this, but this is one of the first natively multimodal models that are out there. So I'm going to show really simple, straightforward kind of examples, but really, really interesting, just the ability to upload an image, upload a video, ask questions of that, get analysis of that, and get meaningful output. Right. So here's one example where again, just upload an image of the fish store, but the prompt here is to extract the items and the prices from a fish market photo and output them in JSON, right? And you're able to easily extract that. Again, these are things that you may be able to do with more advanced Gen AI, with more advanced regular ML type of techniques, but the ease at which you're able to do it, right, kind of starts to breed that democratization. And what's really interesting is that we're starting to see a lot of companies, a lot of enterprises start to dive into a lot of really interesting use cases. And most of the time, these use cases are coming from the business areas and the product areas and not the technology areas. So, for example, visual troubleshooting of equipment, right? So is one that's starting to emerge. Another is warranty claim analysis, right? Where someone is making a claim, you're able to take a picture, do analysis of that, and say, okay, hey, there's a dent here, this here, or it looks like there was other type of damage that's not covered going on, right? To do that. The other, and as I switch to video, is safety and quality process compliance. So you can actually run video through Gemini, and Gemini will understand what's going on, and you can do Q&A and extract information about that. So again, opens up a lot of interesting use cases. So I have a video here, a guy just doing dips. And again, very simple, but I think just illustrative of the power, right? What is this person doing? The ability to understand that the person in the video is doing tricep dips in a method in which anyone, most people in your organization will be able to interface and interact with this is, I think, pretty powerful. And we're seeing a lot of interesting outcomes come from this. So again, keeping it fairly simple, fairly straightforward, but I think that's on purpose because I really think the power comes from driving this to the non-technical audiences within your business. Okay. So on the other side of that coin is Vertex AI, right? So that's our end-to-end AI ML platform that provides the tooling to implement ML ops and LLM ops and to quickly and securely take your LLM applications to production, right? So, and again, we have tools so you can discover, augment, and by augment, we talk a lot of different fine-tuning methodologies. And actually, what I'll speak to is that when we say discover models inside of Vertex, and I'll go here, we have the core Google hosted models, right? All the Gemini and the Palm models and things of that nature. But we have over 100 other open source and proprietary models. So again, it's in Google's DNA to kind of be open in that regard. So you can see Mixtral, you'll see Llama 2, all these models. And again, every model is not here because this is a curated list. Similar to the prior speaker, we look at the safety, the guardrails that are in place, the safety guardrails that are in place, and we provide certain things where you can modify the safety thresholds and make sure that you're not producing content that you don't want to go out. But my point here is that I think you can assume that with our models, and actually the prior presenter actually validated a little bit of that, but also the models that we allow into here that aren't ours, we have taken some care of selecting that every model just can't get in here. What's interesting about that too is that there's tooling within Vertex AI to do a one-click deployment of those models, right, onto recommended infrastructure. So if you have questions like, okay, I want to try, I've heard good things about this new mixture of experts, Mixtral 8x7b model, right? What that is irrelevant if you don't matter. But hey, we've heard good things, but okay, I don't know all the details of what hardware do I need to run it on? What are all the details to make it happen? You go into our model garden, search for that model. If it's there, in most cases, there's a one-click deployment option. You can click on that. You can tune the hardware and specify the way you want to deploy it. But we're going to give you by default a recommended setup from infrastructure and all those things where you can click it, one-click deployment, and you'll have a working endpoint. And in many cases, you'll actually have a online prediction where you can just start testing the model out without even making API calls. You can work with it directly within the console. The other really interesting thing on this tip is that we do have tooling that enables side-by-side evaluation of these models. So you can evaluate them vis-a-vis our models or what have you. This becomes important because when you dive into really building these things and rolling them out at scale and production, especially when you have customer facing, you have to start to think about the cost of each step of the model. Most of these applications are making one interaction with a customer maybe 10, 15, 20 calls to an LLM. So you have to think about cost, you have to think about latency, you have to think about all these things. So there's, as awesome as our models are, it isn't always a one size, one model fits all approach. So we understand that. We understand that because we do it and have a ton of experience doing it, and create an environment where it's easy to take that approach, take that forward, and ultimately take these things to production. The last thing I'll say on this is that there are also tuning pipelines that are set up and come out of the box where all you have to do is provide your data, even for some of the third-party models. So again, we try to obfuscate as much of the hard tricky bits for you as possible. And if you have the team that really needs to customize those things to the T, what can happen is, again, you can empower your business users and your application teams to get you 90% of the way there. And then what you're throwing over the wall is something where we know and we validated that there's business value. And now we need those data scientists, those ML ops folks to do that last 10% to make sure that we're comfortable rolling it out to production. And we have the tools in Vertex for them to be able to do that. Okay. And then the final and third modality that I'll talk about is Duet AI. And this is more, again, driving Gen AI through really putting Gen AI in the hands of users where they work today, in the tools that they use today, right? So in terms of Gen AI for developers, we have Duet AI for developers. Our code assistant technology integrates with VS Code, IntelliJ, a lot of our own IDE. So a ton of IDEs that your development teams already work with, our Duet AI technology can integrate with those and effectively work as a pair programmer along with them to drive drive their productivity. In terms of AI automation and infrastructure within the cloud console, I've spoke to some of the things that we do to ease the burden of dealing with infrastructure. Some of the other things that we do are provide generative AI provided recommendations, generating Terraform scripts and things of that nature. So there's a lot of assisted infrastructure there. In our BI and data platforms like Looker and BigQuery, again, Duet AI integrates Gen AI directly into those platforms where the users are using it to help them get insights from the data, help them write queries. So at whatever level, if you have a data analyst that's writing SQL or using our BigQuery machine learning technology to use SQL to build machine learning models, there's generative AI right there in the platform to help them do that and really accelerate their productivity by avoiding trips to Stack Overflow and a lot of debugging. That you have this professional debugging assistant right there with you driving that. And then third, we actually have a sec PaLM model. So we have a model that is actually have a couple models. I didn't touch on the fact we also have a medically tuned PaLM model that'll be rolling in, medically tuned model to MetaLM. But there's a security tuned model that we use and is integrated into our security products and platforms that help reduce the risk of threat overload. It does a lot of automated checking of your security posture and provides recommendations for how you can block those. So I think that's the long and the short of it.